If you think your HOA president is bad, just wait until you meet Karen from Lakewood Grove. Imagine moving into your dream home, finally away from the chaos of the city, only to realize that the real nightmare is not crime. It's your neighbors. Specifically, one entitled woman who thinks HOA rules don't apply to her, and it all started with a car. Not just any car, a dented, gold-colored SUV parked sideways in my driveway like a drunk cow had abandoned it there. And behind the wheel of that SUV? The one, the only, HOA Karen. I had just pulled into my street after a 12-hour shift. The kind of day where your body aches even before you get out of the car. I remember gripping the steering wheel tighter when I saw the vehicle blocking half my driveway. I blinked twice. Maybe 3 times. Nope, still there. That SUV was squatting there like it owned the place. I pulled over, parked along the curb, and trudged into my house. Inside, my wife was at the kitchen table, working on her laptop. "Hey hun, you expecting company?" I asked, tossing my keys into the bowl by the door. She looked up, puzzled. "No. Why?" I told her about the mystery car and watched her eyebrows knit together in frustration. "I swear to God," she muttered, standing up. "These HOA people think they own everything." And that's when I remembered the Facebook drama. Every suburban neighborhood has one, right? The Facebook group full of middle-aged women arguing about flower colors and mailbox heights. Karen was infamous there. Blonde bob haircut, oversized sunglasses, and a sense of self-importance so massive it needed its own zip code. I checked the Ring camera footage, and sure enough, about 2 hours earlier, Karen had pulled into our driveway, popped the door open like it was her personal valet zone, and sauntered down the street without a care in the world. At first, I told myself to stay calm. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she thought she was visiting someone. Wrong. Hours later, Karen returned, strolling back with an iced coffee in hand like she'd just conquered Everest. I met her at the driveway. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound polite even though my patience was thinner than dental floss. "You're parked in my driveway. Could you please not do that again?" Karen didn't even roll down her window. She smirked at me, that smug little tilt of her lips, and peeled out of the driveway without a word, tires screeching like she was auditioning for Fast and Furious, Suburban Drift. My wife and I stood at the window and watched her go, both of us stunned into silence. "I can't believe she just—" "I know," I interrupted. "But maybe that's the end of it." Spoiler alert, it wasn't. 2 days. That's how long it took before I saw her car again. Same gold SUV. Same terrible parking job. And somehow even more crooked than before. At this point, I seriously started questioning if Karen was doing this on purpose, like she thought my driveway was part of some unspoken HOA VIP lounge. This time, I didn't even hesitate. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I pulled into my garage the best I could, squeezing the side mirror just inches away from her rear bumper. Then I went inside, grabbed a notepad off the fridge, and scribbled a message in my angriest neat handwriting: "Private property. Do not park here again. Next time, your vehicle will be towed." I tucked the note under her windshield wiper with just enough force that it wouldn't blow away in the breeze. Then I stepped back, took a few photos from different angles: license plate, full car, the driveway entrance. Evidence, baby. Because if I've learned one thing about dealing with HOA Karens, it's that you don't go into battle without receipts. I watched from the front window like some suburban sniper, waiting. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. Finally, as the sun dipped low, Karen strutted back up the street with that same arrogant sway, phone glued to her ear, designer handbag bouncing against her hip. She barely glanced at the note. She yanked it off, crumpled it into a ball without even reading it, and tossed it into my bushes. I stood there at the window, jaw slack. "You have got to be kidding me," I muttered, my wife standing beside me equally horrified. Karen slid into her SUV, gave our house a long, lingering glare through the windshield, and roared off down the street like an angry wasp. This time, I didn't laugh. This wasn't funny anymore. It was war. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it over in my head, the way she dismissed me. The way she treated our home like it was hers to use. It wasn't just parking anymore. It was about respect, or, more accurately, her complete lack of it. The next morning over coffee, my wife and I made a pact. Next time Karen trespassed, we wouldn't just ask nicely. We would escalate, legally. And sure enough, fate didn't make us wait long. Saturday rolled around. Beautiful weather. The kind that made our little cul-de-sac look like something out of a real estate commercial. I came home from running errands. Groceries in the back seat, and there it was again. Her SUV, proudly planted in my driveway like a flipping lawn ornament. And this time, I saw red. I didn't even go inside first. I parked across the street, grabbed my phone, and called the local towing company. "Yeah," I said, pacing back and forth. Heart hammering. "Private property. Unauthorized vehicle. Can you send a truck ASAP?" The guy on the line chuckled like he'd heard this 1,000 times before. "Got it. We'll be there in under an hour." I hung up, feeling a delicious little thrill run through me. When Karen showed up again, bags slung over her shoulder like she'd been on some grand shopping spree, she paused mid-step when she saw me standing at the end of the driveway. Arms crossed, phone in hand, smile sharp enough to cut glass. She tilted her sunglasses down her nose and sneered. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Getting your car towed," I replied coolly. Her face turned a fascinating shade of red, somewhere between lobster and nuclear reactor. "You can't do that," she screeched. "Private property," I said, tapping the driveway with my shoe. "You were warned." Karen's mouth flapped open and closed like a fish pulled out of water. I swear, if I hadn't been so focused on staying calm, I would have laughed right there. "You can't tow me," she shrieked again, her voice cracking into that high-pitched dog whistle register only true Karens can reach. I shrugged. "Tow truck's already on the way. If you leave now, maybe you can save yourself the impound fee." For a split second, I thought she'd do the smart thing, grab her keys, peel out of my driveway, disappear into the HOA Facebook group like a bad memory. But nope. Karen's specialty was turning small problems into apocalyptic events. Without warning, she whipped out her phone and dialed. I heard it clear as day. "Yes. Police? I'm being harassed. I'm trapped. I don't feel safe. Please send someone immediately." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Seriously?" She was standing in the open, holding her car keys, a full 15 feet away from me. "Trapped, lady? The only thing trapping you was your own ego." I pulled out my own phone and started recording. No way I was letting her twist this story. She saw me filming and cranked up the theatrics, fake crying, clutching her chest like she was auditioning for some HOA soap opera. My wife peeked out the window behind me and gave me a little thumbs up. "Stay cool. Stay steady." Within minutes, a squad car rolled around the corner, lights flashing, pulling right up to the scene of the great driveway disturbance. Two officers stepped out, one older, with a veteran's calm, the other younger but serious. Karen bolted toward them, tears magically still flowing. "Officer! Officer!" she wailed, pointing dramatically at me like I'd just committed Grand Theft Auto. The older officer held up a hand. "Mom, slow down. One at a time. What's going on?" Karen launched into some deranged fairy tale about how I had threatened her, blocked her car, screamed at her. Meanwhile, I calmly stood on the edge of the driveway, hands visible, phone still recording. When they finally turned to me, I kept it simple. "Officers, here's the ring camera footage from the last 3 incidents. And here's my phone recording of today. She's been trespassing on my property, despite written warnings. Today I called for a tow, she called you." The officers exchanged a glance. "Can we see the footage?" the older one asked. "You bet," I said, pulling up the files. Together, we stood there watching the ring videos, the car pulling in, Karen ignoring notes, Karen tossing my property into my bushes. No yelling. No threats. Just an extremely patient homeowner trying to deal with a raging storm disguised as a woman. Karen's face visibly paled as she realized her fantasy version of events was collapsing like a bad Jenga tower. The older cop turned to her. Expression stony. "Ma'am. Based on this evidence, you are trespassing. And making a false police report is a serious offense." Karen opened her mouth. And before she could spew another lie, she spat directly at him. It happened in a blink. 1 second she was standing there gasping like a fish again. The next, a wad of spit hit the officer squarely on the cheek. Time froze. The younger officer reacted instantly, grabbing her arm and spinning her toward the squad car. "You're under arrest," he barked, "for assaulting a police officer." Karen shrieked, an unearthly sound I still hear sometimes when I close my eyes, and flailed uselessly as they cuffed her and read her rights. Meanwhile, the tow truck arrived, backing down the driveway with a loud beep beep beep. As if to punctuate the moment, the older cop wiped his cheek calmly, then nodded at me. "Thank you for staying calm, sir. We apologize for the disturbance." As Karen was shoved into the back of the cruiser, kicking the door uselessly with her designer sandals, I couldn't help but feel peaceful. A strange, victorious kind of peace. My wife came out onto the porch, holding 2 beers. We clinked bottles as the police car, and the gold SUV behind the tow truck, disappeared down the street. Finally, the real HOA rules were being enforced, and not by Karen. You would think after getting arrested in front of half the street, Karen would finally get the message. You would think wrong. The night after the arrest, I slept better than I had in months. Woke up to birds singing, sunshine pouring through the windows. A real suburban paradise. No strange cars blocking my garage. No Karen patrolling the sidewalks like a mall cop on steroids. It felt like freedom. That lasted exactly 2 days. On the 3rd day, I got a call from the local police department. "Detective Russo. Polite but all business." "Sir, we need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement regarding the trespassing and assault charges. Bring any evidence you have." I agreed. Of course. And gathered everything: photos, ring footage, copies of the notes I had left on Karen's windshield. I even printed out a map of my property lines because hey, better safe than sorry. Sitting in the station under the harsh fluorescent lights was nerve-wracking. But Russo was professional, even cracking a small smile when I showed him the video of Karen's Olympic-level spitting attempt. He jotted everything down carefully. "I'll be honest with you," he said, closing his notebook. "Spitting on an officer? That's serious. We don't let that slide." Hearing that made a knot of anxiety in my chest loosen just a bit. Because honestly, part of me worried Karen would somehow spin this around, turn the whole situation into a circus where I ended up the bad guy. You know how these stories sometimes go. But Detective Russo assured me, "You did everything by the book. You stayed calm. You documented everything. That's what matters." Walking out of the station that day, I felt lighter for about 24 hours. Because then, my wife called me at work, her voice tight. "Have you seen the Facebook group?" I hadn't. I was trying to keep my blood pressure at a reasonable level. "She's posting," she said. "Or at least, someone is posting for her." When I got home, I opened the neighborhood page, and there it was. A long, rambling post filled with half-truths and wild accusations. Karen, or whoever was pretending to be her, claimed she was a victim, that she had been ambushed in her own neighborhood, that the evil forces of property elitists, her words, had conspired against her. She conveniently left out the part where she parked illegally, ignored multiple warnings, refused to leave, faked a harassment claim, and, oh yeah, spit on a cop. Most of the comments were polite, cautious. A few people offered sympathy, but more and more residents started pushing back. One comment stood out: "Funny, Karen. Your car's been parked in the wrong driveway for months. Maybe don't throw stones if you live in a glass HOA." Screenshots were taken. Evidence was saved. Because now, Not only was Karen facing legal trouble, she was doubling down, trying to smear us publicly. My wife and I decided not to engage. No commenting, no arguing, just gather it all quietly, ammo for the court case. A few days later, the prosecutor's office called. An assistant district attorney, Ms. Lauren Pierce, was assigned to the case. She wanted to meet. I sat across from her in a sterile conference room. Evidence stacked neatly in a folder between us. Ms. Pierce was sharp-eyed. "No nonsense. Assaulting a police officer is a felony," she said, tapping her pen on the folder. "Even if it's just spitting, it's still battery. Still a biohazard risk. We're taking it seriously." She wasn't smiling. She wasn't playing politics. She was ready to move forward hard. I explained everything again: dates, times, conversations. The tower of drama Karen had built out of pure entitlement. Ms. Pierce nodded. "We're pushing forward. No deals unless it includes guilty pleas." And just like that, Karen's little neighborhood squabble had evolved into a full-blown criminal prosecution. Court day. There's something surreal about putting on your best clothes, sitting stiffly on a courtroom bench, all because a full-grown adult couldn't follow basic parking rules. My wife squeezed my hand as we sat in the hard wooden seats. Up front, Karen sat next to her attorney, a man who looked like he desperately wanted to be anywhere else. Karen, on the other hand, was in full performance mode. Tissue clutched dramatically in her hand, eyes wide and glassy, occasional sniffles that sounded suspiciously rehearsed. When the judge entered and everyone rose, the weight of it hit me. This was real. She wasn't just facing HOA fines anymore. She was facing criminal charges: trespassing, disorderly conduct, and the big one, assault on a police officer. The prosecutor, Ms. Pierce, laid everything out clearly: video evidence, photos, my formal statements, the police officer's testimonies. Then it was Karen's turn. And oh boy, if you thought Karen's sidewalk performances were bad, you should have seen her try to act under oath. She painted herself as a poor, innocent woman, a fragile victim, overwhelmed by neighborhood stress, confused about whose driveway it was. And the crown jewel of her defense, she claimed the spitting was an involuntary panic reaction. She actually said, "I was so scared. I guess I just spit without realizing it." I risked a glance at the jury. Blank stares, folded arms. One woman slowly raised an eyebrow like she was trying not to laugh. Then came the cross-examination. Ms. Pierce went for the jugular. "Ms. Karen, are you saying you accidentally parked in the same driveway on 3 separate occasions? By mistake?" "Why, yes." "And you accidentally threw a written warning into the homeowner's bushes?" "That was. I didn't realize." "And you accidentally filed a false police report claiming you were attacked, despite clear video evidence showing otherwise?" Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I felt threatened." "And you accidentally launched bodily fluids into the face of a police officer during a calm conversation?" Karen flushed bright red. Tears welled up, but not the good kind. The messy, cornered rat kind. It was a brutal takedown. The defense tried to recover, mumbling about mental distress and character witnesses. But it was like trying to stop a forest fire with a squirt gun. When closing arguments wrapped, the jury didn't even leave for lunch. They went into the deliberation room at noon. By 2 p.m., they were back. "Guilty," the foreman said clearly. "Guilty on all charges." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Karen just sat there, frozen, wide-eyed. No more crocodile tears. No more dramatic sighs. Just a blank, broken stare. The judge immediately scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. Karen shuffled out of the courtroom, flanked by her lawyer, looking like someone had popped her very soul like a balloon. And you know what? It wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. Because when sentencing day arrived, that's when the final hammer dropped. Sentencing day. There's a strange feeling sitting in a courtroom when you're not the one on trial. Relief, mostly, but also a kind of quiet, simmering anger for all the months of stress and anxiety you were forced to endure because of someone else's selfishness. Karen stood before the judge in a conservative gray dress, Hair pulled back tightly. She looked smaller now. No sunglasses, no bravado, no Facebook Live performances. The prosecutor went first, recommending jail time based on the severity of assaulting an officer and the repeated trespassing. Karen's defense attorney begged for leniency, blamed temporary stress, blamed misunderstandings. At one point, he even blamed the neighborhood culture for being too rigid. Karen spoke next, tears streaming down her face. She gave a carefully crafted apology. She apologized for confusion, for miscommunications, for how things appeared. Not once did she actually apologize for her actions. The judge, an older man with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, waited for her to finish. Then he leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Ms. Karen," he said slowly, "this court finds that you deliberately trespassed on private property multiple times, willfully ignored warnings, attempted to manipulate law enforcement, and assaulted an officer performing his duty." You could feel the entire room holding its breath. He continued, "Your actions show a reckless disregard not only for the law but for the safety and dignity of others in your community. This court will not reward that behavior with a slap on the wrist." He picked up the sentencing documents. "You are hereby sentenced to 60 days in county jail, 2 years of supervised probation, mandatory anger management courses, and a permanent restraining order. You are prohibited from coming within 300 feet of the victim's residence." Karen gasped, physically recoiling as the reality hit her. She tried to mutter something, but the bailiff was already stepping forward. "You may remand her now," the judge said briskly. Karen broke down completely as the cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. Real, guttural sobs this time, not the fake ones she'd tried when the cops first arrived in my driveway. She was led out of the courtroom, shackled, her sobs echoing off the marble walls. And just like that, it was over. The house finally felt like a sanctuary again. No random SUVs in the driveway. No frantic doorbell alerts. No HOA drama seeping through the cracks. Over the next few weeks, whispers floated around the neighborhood. Karen's reputation tanked faster than a brick in a pond. Some neighbors who had once gossiped alongside her now avoided her like she was radioactive. Her husband quietly removed her name from the HOA Facebook group. Rumor had it he tried to put the house up for sale, but not many buyers were eager to move in next door to the infamous spitter of Lakewood Grove. One evening, about a month after Karen finished her jail sentence, my wife and I were sitting on the porch, sipping lemonade, watching the sunset over our quiet cul-de-sac. The old neighborhood busybody, Mrs. Green, strolled past with her poodle. She gave us a sly wink. "Looks like HOA Karen finally learned," she said with a chuckle. "Learned what?" my wife asked, smiling. Mrs. Green grinned. "That in this neighborhood, we play by the real rules." We laughed so hard, we scared the poodle. And with that, life rolled on, peaceful, steady, and best of all, Karen free.